You are now watching the Amazing Mets PreGame Show with your hosts, Rob and CP.
Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets!
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets PreGame Show, postseason edition. How are you doing, Mets fans? As you are enjoying this lovely Saturday in October, and the Mets and the Phillies are playing in NLDS Game 1 of the series at Citizens Bank Park. And I know everybody cannot wait for 4 o'clock. All day I was working, just thinking about the game, talking to coworkers about how many innings is Kodai going to go, pitches, etc., all types of different scenarios. And it is less than 2 hours away until game time. Chris, how you feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling energized, man. We took a nice little day off yesterday. We kind of had to sweat through a tremendous wild card series with the Brewers. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling good. Hopefully the New York Mets are feeling good. Hopefully they're well rested as well. I was live yesterday at about 3:15. I know that you were live at 7, giving you all a little bit of our each individual previews for this series. Recapping the Brewers series, but quite simple. Job is not finished. Change the narrative. Again, the national baseball media is talking about, the Mets are on a run. They could make a run. But again, the Phillies are the team to beat. And honestly, I don't disagree with that statement. But again, this 2024 season, this run has been magical. Why let it end here? Go out there, set the tone for this series. You got Kodai on the mound. We're going to talk about, what we could potentially see out of Kodai Senga in his return back. Second start of the season. And what bigger of a scenario and what bigger of a way than going to Philadelphia for NLDS Game 1?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know everybody was shocked when they asked him the question, who's starting Game 1, everybody's thought process was like, oh, Peterson, because it was his throw day in Game 3 of the Brewers series when he closed it out, or Tyler McGill. Nobody had it in their mind that Game 1 Kodai Senga. Now, people would have probably brought it up considering the fact that there was rumblings about him joining the postseason roster at some point if the Mets continue to go further and further into the postseason. But again, Game 1 in the postseason, in hostile territory, in Philadelphia, they are telling us something we don't know, in my humble opinion. And let's start right away with the matchup, right? We know most likely the Cy Young winner is Zack Wheeler, right? He's been outstanding this year. He is electric. We all know him. Obviously, was a Met, former Met. We know how good he has been with the Phillies. But with Kodai Senga, and we got to get right into it because with Kodai, nobody really knows what we're going to get from him. Pitch-wise, innings-wise stuff. But here's one thing I believe, and I said it on my Mets Talk Live show. I said it with Subway to Shea with Ant yesterday as well. They wouldn't make this move, Game 1, on the road, in Philadelphia, in the NLDS, if Stearns and Mendoza and other coaching staff and medical people all weren't comfortable with what they've seen. And you say, well, what have they seen? How much could he actually pitch? Well, I think he was hidden away in Port St. Lucie, throwing a live bat in practice, playing simulated games, and working up his pitch count. Now, maybe that's just a fairy tale in my head, but I don't think they would use him as an opener. I don't think it makes sense. You're going to use a lot of your bullpen in Game 1 when you might have 4 more games after today. I don't see them doing that. I think that's a bad job if they think that's the route they would go, because then it wouldn't make sense. So in my opinion, I think he's probably okay for probably 70 to 80 pitches, to be quite honest with you. I think he's built up his strength in that case. And I think Mendoza and Stearns says, well, guess who the Phillies haven't seen this year? Kodai Senga. And I think with playing in that ballpark, the Ghost Fork his heavy ball gets a lot of ground balls. You don't want them to lift that ball in that ballpark. That's how you beat the Phillies, by keeping them in the ballpark. Why not go out there with Kodai Senga? I don't know what you're thinking, Chris. Obviously, we're going to get your opinion just now, but that's my feeling when it comes to Stearns and Mendoza making that decision for game 1 on the road.
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. And the only reason I say this is that, you have Tyler McGill also waiting right behind Kodai Senga. So it doesn't really matter if Kodai goes 3, 4, or 5. I would like to see him pitch deeper into the ball game naturally because, one, we just haven't seen him enough. So I think that if he's out there right now, they've deemed him ready enough and healthy enough to go out there and pitch effectively in the biggest stage and biggest part of the season. But, two, he's had success against this Phillies lineup, right? Last year, he had, I think, a couple, at least one, just tremendous start. Might have even been his best start of his career so far, very early into it in the MLB against the Phillies. Like, I want to see him pitch deep into this ball game, but I understand if the philosophy on the flip side of things, I understand if the philosophy is pitch him for 2 to 3 innings, keep him around maybe 60 pitches instead of 70, 80, 90, right? I don't think we see 90. I think that's just unrealistic. I think maybe 70, 80, like you said, but I also wouldn't be surprised with maybe 55, 60 because you have also Tyler McGill. Now, Carlos Mendoza, we know who's starting game 2 and 3, presumably, right? Game 2 is going to be Luis Severino, from what I heard. Game 3, I would have to think it's going to be Sean Manaea. I would have to think. And then you see what happens for a potential game 4 or 5. I think that, with their success against the Phillies, I'm pretty confident in going out there with a combination of Senga and then knowing that McGill and Peterson are also available out of the bullpen. So you don't really need to burn your bullpen, your true bullpen guys, because you have those starters waiting in the wings. Now, again, like the strategy changes if this turns from a 3-game set, 4-game set to a 5-game set, right? Because obviously the Phillies as well, they're only carrying 4 starters. The New York Mets are coming off of a series against the Brewers where obviously Jose Quintana just pitched, so he's not going to be ready until game 4 or 5 as well. There's a lot of different scenarios here, but I can see this playing out both ways, where they're going to try to use him to the max, right? Because they've deemed him healthy enough, or they're going to try to still ease him in, but knowing that Tyler McGill is waiting right there. Or David Peterson. It doesn't really matter. I think that David Peterson has had a little bit of less success against the Phillies in his career than Tyler McGill. Tyler McGill actually just owns the Phillies. I'm not going to even lie to you. Hopefully I don't jinx it, but I was looking up the career stats against the Phillies for Tyler McGill. He does really well against that ball club. So, again, I can see a situation with both, but I think it'd be a little bit disappointing for me to see him go out there and only toss like 2 innings as an opener. I think that would be a little bit disappointing for me. I agree with you.
Yeah, and what if he dominates in those 2 innings? Like, you're not going to force the issue if you already planned on doing 2 innings. So, I looked up McGill's stats against the Phillies as well, even prior to yesterday on the off day. I looked. I'm like, huh. I'm surprised they didn't go McGill game 1. You could have easily eased Senga into this series. I'm not saying throw him out of the bullpen or anything like that. I don't think the Mets want to do that. But you could have worked around. You could have set him for game 4 if necessary. And worst case scenario, if you're in a spot here where you might be in elimination mode in game 3, maybe you'll have him ready to go, even if it might be out of the bullpen anyway. I think they were. I thought they were going to ease into it. Unfortunately, if it was a 7-game series, it would be easy to get as many starters out there as you can, especially a guy who should have been your ace. It is going to be very interesting. Again, we're not just talking about an NLDS here. We're talking about a guy who hasn't pitched more than 5 innings this year. So we really don't know. They got their ace on the mound. We have our quote unquote ace on the mound with no expectation of what he can do. And, I think all of us are right? He can go 2 innings, be an opener. He can go 6 innings. And would anybody be shocked? Like, I really do feel this. I don't think they would put him in this game. Now, if it was at home, I would have probably said you might be right with the opener. I think because he's on the road and they made that decision kind of quickly, like it was basically what party time on Thursday, and they made the decision. I think it was at the post game interview that Mendoza said it. I mean, I feel like they wouldn't do that because worst, even if you do 2 innings, and see what I don't like is that I mean maybe you could just throw Peterson in the bullpen and that would be their choice, and then McGill would piggyback off of Senga. I mean that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, right? I would be okay with that. I would just be a little worried because you're putting a lot of confidence in Severino, Minaya, and Quintana if those games happen, that if any of them pitch bad early on, and say if you did use Peterson in one of these games and you can't lose him as a long man because he hasn't done it, you lose that extra guy that you could go to. And again, who cares about game 4 and 5? It might not matter, right? I think.
Do you think though that they will like that's but that I know game 4 and 5 doesn't matter to us right now, but like having a pitcher that hasn't pitched this whole entire season, do you think they would use him as kind of like that opener today and then just try to see if they can work him back in for a potential game 5? Do you think they're even thinking about that or no?
So you're thinking this is like, all right, trial by watching in like 2 innings and see what he got. And if he's really good, we're like, oh, I guess we can use him in game 5 if necessary. Like, so this is like a, hey,
Something
look,
like
he's
that.
back.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're playing with fire there because if he gets rocked the first couple of innings, like, you're already down, it can be demoralizing. I know this team has bounced back so many times, but that can be demoralizing. Everybody's excited that Kodai Senga is back. And if he gets lit up in the first 2 innings and you have to use McGill because he's getting lit up, different story if he shuts him down and then use McGill, you understand why, and you get that understanding and that plan. But if he gets lit up and then you have to use McGill because he got lit up, and their plan might have been, all right, let's put him in game 1 as an opener and then use him for game 5. Would you use him for game 5 if you got lit up in game 1 for 2 innings? I don't know. Like, I think they're kind of like playing with fire, but these guys don't seem like they make a decision rationally, like an irrational decision. They've done their homework on this. I truly believe this guy was in Port St. Lucie working his ass off, getting his pitch count up, because I don't think they would have made this move, especially on the road. I just don't feel that. Now, I could be totally wrong. Again, we'll see in about an hour and 15 minutes. But the way Senga spoke in the interview, in I think what was it, yesterday or today, he just looked very like he was smiling when they were asking a question about how many innings, how many pitches. I truly think this is like the biggest kept secret in postseason baseball right now. Like, I truly believe that. Like, I think we're all going to be shocked at what Kodai Senga is going to put out there. Not saying the Mets are going to win, because the Mets could not show up offensively and Senga could pitch good. We've seen this enough in 3 games with the Brewers, right? I wouldn't be shocked. I think they've known that they had this plan with Senga before, right when the Mets clinched their ticket in Atlanta. I think they marked out when Kodai Senga can come back. And they said, if we beat the Brewers, this is where he's pitching. I truly believe that. Because for Mendoza to say that post-game, just blur it out there, he wasn't drunk. He blurted it out there without a thought. Like, if you heard it, as soon as the question was asked, the answer was there, Kodai Senga. I mean, that's not something that you and Stearns talk about in the back room right after the game. So I just think that this is well planned out. This is the biggest kept secret, and they fooled everybody. The Phillies probably weren't expecting it. We damn sure weren't expecting it. So just imagine the Philadelphia Phillies going, probably preparing for David Peterson or Tyler McGill. Now you gotta prepare for Kodai Senga.
Yeah.
In that ghost fork pitch.
I was on my live stream yesterday and I was making my slides with either McGill or Peterson waiting for the announcement, and I was going to talk about both, but then they kind of, made it official, quote unquote, about the Kodai Senga sort of news. I should have, I guess, I didn't hear Mendoza say it in the post game after the Brewers game, so I didn't really know about that, right? Maybe I should have been looking out for that, but I didn't hear it. And so I got completely blindsided on my live stream yesterday. Again, after you guys watch this, go check it out. Go check out the Subway to Shea live stream with Rob. Go check out the Mets Talk Live with Rob. Please also just hit the thumbs up if you're a part of this chat. I think we got bogged down by this game preview here. Hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, obviously. But yeah, no, 100%. I think that I looked at that interview, right? The press conference with Kodai Senga, right? You saw his demeanor. He was smiling. You saw the preseason, right? Even before the season started, they were asking him, which lineup are you most excited to face? And he said the Phillies, right? Like, there is something between Kodai Senga and the Philadelphia Phillies that is like personal. Like, there's not a long-standing history there, but he's just kind of hand-selected for one reason or another, the Philadelphia Phillies lineup. And honestly, he's had good success against them. Now, again, you talk about that ghost fork pitch. He throws it for about 33% of the time, just a tad under at like 32 point something. And guess what? Last season, obviously, he's only pitched in one game this season, right? At the major league level against the Braves, he did pretty solid. But last season, opposing hitters were only hitting 110 off of his ghost fork pitch, right? Off that fork ball. 110. Like, that's insane. So I agree with you 100%. This is such a switch up for the Philadelphia Phillies lineup when they're kind of game planning for either Tyler McGill or David Peterson. And now they have to go ahead and realize that, shoot, I'm going to have to try to lay off this fork ball this whole entire game. It's not an easy game plan to sort of get notified the day before, as you're sort of prepping for the series. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm a little bit, intrigued to see how the Philadelphia Phillies also come out having, sat. I hope that the history repeats itself with these teams that bought themselves the, opening round bye and skipping the wild card and showing up rusty and a little slow after having sat for a couple of days. I hope that kind of repeats itself. But again, we'll see. I think that momentum is a very big thing in the postseason. We've said this time and time again. You get hot at the right time. The Mets are coming off of an electric, hard-fought series, right? They had to do all the little things and they had to execute in order to prevail in that series. And maybe, right, being that game ready, that game speed ready is an advantage for the Mets. At least we would hope. So we'll see what happens. I'm really curious how, what limits they're going to push Kodai Senga to. But this has obviously been pre-planned. Like you said, they have a ballpark. If they have a pitch count, if they have an innings count, they've got that going into today, and everybody knows about it. So Tyler McGill is going to know if his name is going to get called, right? First up, David Peters is going to know. I'm curious to see, right? Because Mendoza alluded to the fact that everybody, pitching-wise, is available today outside of Jose Quintana, who just threw, and Luis Severino, who's going in game 2. So everybody else is all hands on deck from what Carlos Mendoza said. Would they pitch, right, both Peterson and McGill in this game, knowing that this is a best of 5 and you might need one of those guys to start maybe in a game 4, game 5? I don't know. I don't know what the strategy is here. This is why Carlos Mendoza gets paid the big bucks. But I'm kind of chuckling at a comment in here. Oliver said, it looks like Brazo banned, and he's not on the postseason roster. So they kicked him and Max Kranick off. But also, right, I know we've been talking pitching. We're all excited for Kodai Senga. I'm ecstatic for Kodai Senga. I love Kodai Senga. This guy's an absolute gem, and he embodies what it means to be a proud New York Met. Like, he is wearing that uniform with pride always, and he cannot wait to get out there. I'm sure it's been eating at him the whole season that he could not be out there with this team, helping this team win ball games. He's just that much of a team player. But how about some other kind of big news as it relates to the offense? Jeff McNeil is starting baseball activities. He just had a kid. Him and his wife just had a kid, I believe. So congratulations to the McNeils. That's awesome. He's restarting baseball activities. He's going to be on the taxi squad for the Mets. So he's going to be in the Philadelphia area, ready if his name gets called up to the roster. It just seems like the Mets have, the injury bug is starting to resolve itself. It's all hands on deck. They're getting the proper pieces back. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see Jeff McNeil anytime soon. Again, he's coming off of a fractured right wrist, right? That's kind of important to swing a baseball bat, and we don't know how that's healed. But again, if he's starting baseball activities, if he's ready to go, then that means he's probably almost game ready, and that's just great news. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, because I think Anthony DeComo put that tweet out there earlier today about Jeff McNeil, which honestly was a pleasant surprise for me. And everybody's always asking about Brett Beatty. Yes, he's also part of the taxi squad. He's actually with the Mets right now. We just saw him taking ground balls at second base. By the way, he was taking grounders at second base at Citizens Bank Park ahead of Game 1 today.
Yeah, and look, every team has a taxi squad just in case of injuries. And again, the good thing about almost all of these series, except for the Yankees and Royals, they're within striking distance of each other, geographically. So, that works. It's like the Mets are in San Diego, the Phillies are in Texas or something like that, right? So they would actually be, within limits, close proximity to each other. But having the taxi squad, you don't have to have the guy travel. They're with the team, obviously. So that's always good. So if somebody gets hurt or, a roster move has to be made because of injury or whatever it might be, those guys can be on the roster like that. And that's always what is a good sign when you have guys on taxi squads. But it is interesting to see who's available who is on the taxi squad, Beatty, McNeil. So I'm assuming McNeil is probably more possibly ready than a lot of they're portraying. I would think if they're gonna put him on a taxi squad just in case of whatever might happen. But what they didn't do craziness with the roster, right? They took off Max Kranick, which he never was used, and Brazaban is off the roster. So that's McGill and Kodai Senga spot now. So nothing's really changed. And speaking of the roster leading into the lineup here, does it look familiar, guys? It looks like Game 3 against the Brewers, right? Now, and Chris was like, hey, trying to get that magic, that mojo. And I was like, yeah, except for the first 8 innings of the game. But you know what? It ended up
broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, don't broke, don't fix it. But hey, listen, it ended up being a winning lineup at the end of the day or night. As crazy as that night was, and I'm still trying to feel like it was like it just felt unreal, to be quite honest. And going with the same lineup, very interesting, Chris. And I know a lot of people don't like Vientos in the number 2 spot. If you go back to the season, his best numbers and production is in the 2-hole. But I understand why people are questioning it, because they would want Jose Iglesias in the 2-hole because he can do everything, right? He can take pitches. He can take a walk, right? He can slap the ball the other way. He can do a lot of things at the number 2 hole. He's a perfect number 2 hitter. Why Vientos is there? I think because of the numbers. He's a guy that can hit the fastball, the high velocity fastball. What does Zack Wheeler throw? High velocity fastball, right? Vientos is not good against off-speed breaking pitches. He has problems with that. Wheeler is a fastball type of guy. He will throw his fastball more often than any other pitch. He likes to establish the strike zone. He likes to get ahead in counts. And Vientos likes to jump on fastballs. I think that's the reason why the lineup is the same. I think that's why Vientos is still in the 2-hole. Now, if I were to put the lineup together, I would have moved Iglesias to number 2 and Vientos 5. But, again, we've seen it in the playoffs already. The ball is going to find you. The at-bat where important situations where runners on is going to find you. No matter if you're Alvarez at 9, Vientos at 2, Iglesias at 5. Doesn't matter. Right? Doesn't matter, Chris. And we all know that, right? We all complain about the lineup, but it seems like every game, that one guy that we didn't want there in the lineup always finds the spots where they need to be productive and a run producer. So I'm okay with the lineup. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm sick and tired of, myself bitching about a lineup when you come postseason time. It's not like, DJ Stewart's in this lineup or something like that, in a postseason, right? Then we can put our hands up in the air, right? Bader has not played. So the one guy who's
he should not be playing. He should not be playing.
100%. 100%. And look, JD Martinez is an afterthought right now, right? He might get up in the big spot with a lefty, but he hasn't started much. He started game 1 only, if I'm not mistaken, or game 2, right? And there you go. So he's going with the hot hands at this point, right? As many guys as he possibly can that is hot. The two guys that are struggling, Martinez and Bader, are on the bench. So you see what Mendoza's trying to do. So, Chris, what do you think of this lineup? And are you okay with Vientos at the 2 spot?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Honestly, I think I would take the route in terms of, understanding that I think Lindor and Iglesias back-to-back 1-2 is a little bit more efficient for me, in my opinion. And like I've said this in the Brewers series again, right? I was expecting a different lineup for game 3, similar to, I believe, what Mendoza did in game 2 in terms of separating Nimmo and Alonso, and put Vientos in the middle of those guys. But again, this offense, as we've said this entire season, with the personnel that is presented here with us, no matter what the order is, they should be able to put up runs. I think that this is a very balanced lineup, and I think that this lineup provides a little bit more balance. And you look at Starling Marte. I'm watching Starling Marte ever so closely this series because his numbers against Wheeler, first of all, the New York Mets lineup that they threw out there today, I was looking at the career numbers against Wheeler. They're pretty good. They're surprisingly pretty good. Francisco Lindor's had success against him. Marte's definitely had success against him. And you look at like just up and down the lineup, pretty decent numbers. Now we know how the game went on Sunday Night Baseball a week and a half ago, right? When the Mets took game 4 to win that series, Zack Wheeler looked electric. And you're right. He throws his 4-seam fastball like 42% of the time. So he's going to establish, just like Tobias Myers did in that game 3, he's going to try to establish that 4-seamer. And he honestly might throw the 4-seamer in pitchers' counts because, again, the Met lineup loves to do this. When they're down 1-2, 0-2, they're expecting the slow stuff. They're expecting the curveball or the sweeper, right? But they get the fastball and they're frozen. Have you looked at I even rewatched some of those at-bats against Tobias Myers where he kind of froze some guys on an 0-2 fastball. Like, they weren't even ready to swing. Yeah. So that tells me that they were guessing off speed. Can't do that, especially against Wheeler, right? Tobias Myers is great, and he's going to be great for the rest of his career. But respectfully, Zack Wheeler's been doing this for quite some time, and his track record speaks for itself. So he also throws a plethora of pitches. He has a lot of pitches to mix in. You talk about the 4-seamer. He's got a sinker that's also elite. So not only do you have to worry about a fastball that's going to move straight at you at like 97, 98, you also have to now worry about a fastball that's going to tail inward to righties, which makes it ever so difficult. I believe Jose Iglesias got hit by a pitch. I'm not sure against if it was Wheeler or not, but it was against a 2-seamer that was just running tremendously inside. And it's really hard to pick up because it looks like a 4-seamer and then just breaks in, and righties have a really tough time with it. You have to account for that. The splitter, the sweeper, the curveball. This guy has a vast arsenal, but again, he's not unbeatable. I just told you the Mets have had relatively good success against Wheeler in terms of the overall numbers, the individual numbers. Go out there and utilize the opposite field, please, especially at Citizens Bank Park. The opposite field is to be had, right? Starling Marte has done it really well. If you go look back at the series in Philadelphia, right, before the Phillies came to New York, Starling Marte had an opposite field, right? Utilize the opposite field. These guys have been doing that. We saw Pete do it. Finally, he puts a ball over the wall. This is a short fence out there in right field. And the Phillies are going to have the same advantage. And honestly, maybe even more so because they have lefties that can put the ball over that wall. And Schwarber and Stott and Harper. But again, I think the bread and butter, especially against a guy like Wheeler, right? You saw where Tobias Myers was trying to paint those pitches outside. You just got to shoot it the opposite way, and good things will happen. I promise you. So I'm looking out for that. I like the lineup. Go out there and just do the damn thing, score some runs.
Yeah, they got to just go up to the plate with basic fundamentals, right? Chris, we talked about this, right? You've played baseball. If you are a person who played baseball, I've never understood guessing on a pitch when you're at the plate. You always got to look fastball and adjust to the breaking ball or off-speed pitch. That's the way it's always been taught. I don't know if it's analytics. I don't know if it's watching too much video and they're expecting certain pitches and certain counts, and yet 9 times out of 10 they don't get it. And unless the pitcher is tipping his pitches, how are you going to really know? And they don't throw, 3-0 fastballs used to be just normal. How many times have you seen guys throw curveballs 3-0, right? It's a whole, that's why guessing, especially nowadays, because they'll throw any pitch at any time, is pointless. Like, they need to look fastball. I'd rather look silly looking for a fastball on a breaking ball. Like, I'd rather you have that Carlos Beltran looking curveball, looking at that when you're trying to look fastball and you get caught frozen by that curveball, right? That showed me what Beltran was looking for, right? I don't think anybody was expecting a certain, you can't expect a pitch. Like, it's just, especially guessing, it just doesn't work. It might work every now and then, but it's just bad fundamentals when it comes to hitting. And I just hope that they realize, like, if you're going to do your homework, which I'm hoping these guys do, which I think they do, you said it, 42% of the time is that fastball. Why are you looking for anything else at that point is just not good hitting fundamentals. And I think Wheeler is a guy that can be a little bit wild, but he loves to establish the strike zone. He loves to pound the zone and get ahead and count. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he has, 10 pitches and none of them are in the strike zone. Like, because that's what he does. He throws a ton of strikes. And if he sees you not swinging at them, why would he go outside the zone? Right? But if you're swinging at them, fouling them off, taking good at-bats against them, taking good swings on that fastball, guess what he's going to start throwing? He's going to start throwing that curveball. He's going to start throwing that slider, changeup. He's going to start throwing those pitches, and that's when he can get in trouble too. Because when he can't establish the fastball and can't get ahead in the count with that fastball, the pitch count's going to go up. He's not going to be as successful as he usually is. And the Mets, for the most part, has probably done better against him than probably any other team in baseball. So they just got to stay within themselves. They can't do too much, right? We talked about that in game 1 against the Brewers. They didn't try to do too much. They took what the pitcher gave them, right? Ball on the outside corner, I'll take it to right field, right? If there was a pitch that they needed to drive, they drove it. That's what they need to do here. If you do try to do too much with Zack Wheeler, you're going to have a bad day. And that's something that they have to avoid, right? Luckily for us, we bat first. We set the tone. And the lineup needs to set the tone, right? Shut the crowd up in Philly right away. That's what they need to do. It's going to be jump in, right? I'm annoyed that these are day games. I mean, not really, because I don't have to stay up late at night.
Too.
Right?
Yeah.
I like, because I can get some sleep before work, but the night game, it doesn't, like, day games just feel postseason kind of, it's a little weird, but it is what it is. We're still going to be nervous. We're still going to be going through it, but you got to shut down the crowd. You got to shut them down. They're extremely loud. We know how Philly fans are. I've been there numerous times. They can act certain ways that, are not very friendly. So the lineup got to start early. Put some runs on the board early for Kodai Senga, regardless of how long he's going to pitch. They got
Did you talk about Jeremy Barnes and what he said to Pete Alonso in terms of going up to the plate, in terms of Devin Williams's, I guess, tipping, quote unquote, and telling him that's the changeup? Because I see Ken's comment in the chat here talking about the hitting coach, but I thought that was a brilliant moment. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, and you know what? For all the people that wanted these hitting coaches fired, trust me, these guys, some of them, look, clearly that was crazy. And yeah, me and Anthony last night talked about it. Just a little shift in his glove that obviously, and it was just picture perfect that, John Boy did the whole, video and everything and the breakdown, and it's just so perfect. And he actually hit the changeup, which is Williams' best pitch. That's amazing. It really is. And you know what? That's not stealing signs. That's not banging on a trash can. That is good, smart. I guess what would you call it? You would call it, friendly baseball. Like it's a game within the game, right? There's no cheating involved with that. Somebody picked it up. That's on the pitcher and the Brewers for not noticing that, or the catcher. So it's on them. But that was a great video of that, and just an amazing job by the coaching staff, because that shows you they're paying attention, right? Barnes is the assistant hitting coach. He could be sitting there eating sunflower seeds and twiggling his thumbs, right? That's what he could do. He could just be sitting there. He's not the main guy, right? It's Chavez. But he was doing his job. And don't you think that, and you see that everybody's working here. So again, it's not just a few players or just the 26-man roster. It is everybody on the coaching staff. They're doing their jobs. They're working to get this team to the next level, winning those games. You don't win a World Series just because of the players on the field. It's the coaches. It's the training staff. It's everybody. And you saw it in what happened with Pete Alonso and Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite simple. It is quite simple. That was a good moment. Am I convinced with the coaches? I just said in the chat, I'm not convinced, but it was a good moment. I think that that sort of flies under the radar in terms of the importance. But obviously, everybody's watching at any given moment. They watch film. Like, obviously, John Boy did a really good job in terms of breaking that down. I don't know if, like, definitely the wiggling of the fingers inside the glove, for sure. That's like what any hitter probably looks out for in terms of if they're, have a pattern with that. But not sure in terms of like the glove angle. It was very minuscule. And I think in that big of a situation, I'm not sure if that's exactly what the hitters are looking for. But again, I could be wrong. I have no idea. But that's just like, it was a good breakdown. I'll give you that. But yeah, listen, I'm excited for this game. I think that, again, the Philly crowd is definitely going to be pumping. Even when it comes back to Citi Field, the Mets crowd is going to be the same way, right? They haven't seen playoff baseball since 2022. This is going to be an electric series.
Yep.
I'm not going to give, I don't know if you're going to give any sort of predictions. I'm not giving any predictions. I'm staying away from any predictions. I think it's going to be a good series. It wouldn't surprise me if this series does see, obviously, game 4, but even a game 5. It would not surprise me. I'm feeling good, though. I think the Mets do have the momentum in their favor in terms of already playing baseball and having played meaningful baseball for the last couple of nights in Milwaukee. I think they have that in their favor. Guys are still banged up, though. We know that, Winker's dealing with maybe a back issue, but he's, healthy enough to play back in the lineup today. He's getting on base, making contributions. We know Francisco Lindor is going to be dealing with his back probably until the Mets, either win the World Series or get eliminated, right? No matter what they do, he's going to be dealing with his back issue. So everybody's playing with something, but it's all hands on deck. Unless you physically probably cannot go out there and play to the best of your ability, if you're an everyday starter, you're out there. Yep. I can't wait for it. Now, again, Zack Wheeler versus Kodai Senga is great. I think both teams have aligned their rotations in a unique way. So game 2, you're going to see not Aaron Nola, right? Usually it goes Zack Wheeler, Aaron Nola, but the Phillies said, no. We're going to throw Christopher Sanchez. Christopher Sanchez has, let's face it, he's owned the New York Mets this season. They could not figure out Christopher Sanchez in the games that I watched. So that's going to be a tough battle as well. But again, right, you have the pitching has carried, let's just say this, the pitching has carried the New York Mets pretty much the majority of the season. I'm not saying the offense was non-existent, but they went into cold stretches and they definitely were inconsistent. They're going to have to show up. What we saw from Pete Alonso, we can only hope that 9th inning in Milwaukee in game 3 between Lindor, Nemo, and Alonso, and what they did as a core unit to will the Mets to victory, we got to see that all series long. It's going to be a tough battle. It's going to be an uphill battle to climb because, again, on paper, I have no problems with saying this. The Phillies, probably of any team in the playoffs right now, on paper, roster-wise, probably are the most equipped to make a run. But again, anything can happen when it comes around to the playoffs and playoff baseball. And that's the most beautiful thing about it. So again, we're going to see what happens today. You got to put runs up on the board. It would shock me if it was a replication of what we saw in Game 4 of that series on Sunday Night Baseball between Wheeler and Tyler McGill. It ended 2-1. The Mets were able to scratch one run off of Zack Wheeler, and they did just enough to win that ball game in the end. It wouldn't shock me if it goes that way again, but I would just rather see more runs scored in this game. Obviously, more so on the Mets side, but offense is exciting, right? I love a pitching duel. Trust me, don't get me wrong. But offense is exciting. So I hope these Mets bats come to show up and they show out. But yeah, I'm curious in terms of how the numbers play here with this lineup, having faced Zack Wheeler obviously recently, but again in their entire careers. I wonder how that plays. That crowd is going to be electric, though. It is a shame. I'm not really a fan of the 4 p.m. starts. I'm not going to lie. I'm not really a fan of these 4 p.m. starts. But listen, what do we say? Like, what more do we have to say, Rob, in terms of our thoughts on this series, other than the fact that my hashtag and my slogan for this playoffs has been change the narrative? Not many people believe, right, that I've seen that the Mets can actually pull this off. They're giving credit to the Mets now, which is a first step. But that shouldn't be that's not satisfactory to me. We are greedy at this point. We want more.
Yeah.
We want more. And I want to see more Mets go. Again, buckle up, Mets fans. Really, buckle up. If you thought that Brewers series was crazy, I think this series has a potential to top that, really.
This series is unique within itself. The Mets and Phillies never played in postseason history against each other, right? So that's already one thing, right? The Mets had their battles with the Braves in the postseason in the past. And look, and you talked about night games in the postseason. They just hit differently, right? It just feels different. But, it is what it is. We Mets and Phillies got to deal with it. It sucks. It's annoying. And I know there's Phillies in the Philly fans in the chat right now. And listen, we love our teams. We're diehards. We can't stand each other as a fan base. That's okay. That's the whole point of a rivalry, right? Right. That's the fun part about it, right? You're sports fans, right? Giants, Eagles fans hate each other, right? Cowboys, Eagles. I know that's not New York, but you know what? I'm a Cowboys fan, but you understand, right? It goes. It's not just baseball. Knicks, Sixers. It ended pretty well for Knicks, but sorry about that. But for you Philly fans there. But listen, guys, this is a rivalry that has gone on for many, many years, right? I grew up, when the Phillies weren't very good. Then they started to get good in the mid 2000s, with the Utleys and the Howards and those guys, and all that going on and all that craziness. But all that means nothing. It really doesn't. It comes down to execution from both sides. Who pitches better? Who gets the big hits? And that's what always determines it in sports, right? We all want to beat the Phillies. The Philly fans want to beat us, right? And I've listened to a lot of Philadelphia radio over the last day or two. I don't want to hear no Philly fans saying you wanted the Mets, because I heard you 4 days ago saying that you did not want no part of us, all on sports radio in Philadelphia. So now, and that guy Brody on YouTube, who's a huge Phillies YouTube guy and all that, saying that he wanted the Mets. No, you didn't. Don't stop that. You got great work, but you're so full of shit. And Philly fans, you are too. You never want to play a team that's playing with house money. All the pressure's on the Phillies. If you don't believe that, then you're not paying attention. Sorry, it is. Right? It really is. The Mets, if they lose this series, it would suck for Met fans. But we weren't supposed to be here anyway. And Philly fans, don't lose to that wild card team, that team in New York, that little brother. You don't want to lose to us, right? Especially the first time ever playing each other in the postseason. And again, this is by no means saying the Phillies aren't a good team. They are one of the best teams in baseball. They've proven it. But you also were good for about 80 games this year, about 90 games this year. You were excellent in the first half. The second half, if it wasn't for your big lead, who knows what would have happened? because you didn't play that well in the second half. You played all right, but you didn't play the way you did in the first half. So who's going to prevail here? The last time I checked, baseball postseason has become a crapshoot. It is like the hockey playoffs now. It's basically how it is now. Go out there, Mets. Do your job. Don't make mistakes. Keep the Phillies in the ballpark, and you got a damn good chance to win. And that is basically my final thoughts. Fuck Philly. Fuck them.
I think it's been pretty funny scrolling my X timeline. I haven't really watched too many like Phillies content, creation videos and YouTubers over on here on this side, but over on X, there's like a bunch of Philly sports accounts that somehow pop up onto my timeline. It's just kind of funny watching the discourse that they have versus the Mets fans that I follow as well, and kind of like just like this like ongoing feud. It's awesome. Like this is what a rivalry means, and this is the start, hopefully, of maybe these teams meeting each other more in the postseason. I'm not even sure how this is the first time, but again, here we are. Obviously, I think the Mets, like respectfully, I think the Mets play Philly close. Like I feel like they play the Phillies close a lot, and I know the season series went 7-6 in the Phillies' favor, but again, lots of close ball games mixed in between there, and I think that that has an opportunity to make the bullpen production the difference maker, right? The key difference maker in this series, right? If you're playing these close ball games, if the history repeats itself, the bullpen is really going to be an indicator of who can lock down the opposing lineup once both starting pitchers exit the ball game, no matter how many innings they throw, respectively. So, yeah, no, I'm excited. I know Philly fans are pumped up. We're pumped up, right? We're on here every single day on the pregame and the postgame talking about our New York Mets. I want to come on here, obviously, on the postgame and spam more W's, right? I love doing that. I love seeing everybody in the chat get involved in spamming the W's. Change the narrative, man. Change the narrative. I'm going to end pretty much every single stream from here on out with change the narrative, because the New York Mets obviously have been fighting to change that narrative the whole entire season, but not stopping now. There's no reason to stop now. So it's going to be an exciting series. Again, I think that we can both say, like we all know, if Mets fans don't want to admit it, that's fine. We know Philly's a good team. We know the Phillies are a good team. Like that's a well-established fact. But yeah, there's no way that somebody can tell me that, Phillies in 3 or something like that. No, the Mets are swiping game in this series. And you know what? I think they have a great chance to win it. I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling good. We'll see if that rings true. And we'll have to talk about it. If it doesn't ring true, we're going to have to sit back here on this post game and rewatch it and sort of reevaluate the way we were feeling. But again, as a Mets fan right now, knowing, and I know that, if the Mets lose, we're obviously going to say, we've already established the fact. For me, house money was getting into the playoffs. That was house money for me, personally speaking. To see where this team's at now, I knew that, they had a great opportunity to also get past the Brewers. But now this is extra house money they're playing with. And a team that's playing with house money, right? A team that wasn't supposed to be good, according to Max Scherzer, or even trying to go for it, according to Max Scherzer, et cetera, until 2025. The fact that they're in the NLDS is pretty damn good to me. I think that's the definition. In your first year, of a new regime, new president of baseball operations, new manager, it is what it is. And I know that's an easy cop-out, but I don't care. It is what it is. But a dangerous team is one that plays with house money. You are right, Rob. I know you say that a lot. That is correct. Go out there and change the narrative, set the tone, take game one. I think game ones are always important, right? You talk about game one of the Braves doubleheader to put them into the postseason. You talk about game one in Milwaukee, offense coming alive, winning 8-4. Take game one. No better time to have Kodai Senga back. Can't wait to watch him throw the ghost fork. Hopefully he's still very effective and efficient. And I'm hoping to see more innings than not from Kodai Senga. I know we talked about, obviously, the opener, an opener versus maybe going the distance in terms of throwing 80, maybe 85 pitches. I want to see more of Kodai Senga. We haven't seen enough of Kodai Senga. Obviously, health, permitted, but the Mets have a plan already. They have a pre-established plan. They had this plan to bring him back right now, right? This is probably in the works for at least a week, I would say. If not, maybe a couple days. And then they have a plan about how they're going to actually utilize him. Nobody knows, though. Why would they reveal that? They're not going to come out there and say that he's going to be an opener versus, oh, yeah, he's going to go until he gets in trouble. No, they're not going to say that. But I'm curious. It's going to sort of reveal a lot to me about how the Mets view this series, the way they use Kodai Senga here in the first couple of innings of this ball game. So let's go Mets, change the narrative, and catch you on the post game. Let's do it.
Yeah, and listen, I just want Mets fans and Philly fans, you might want to join in this as well. I'm not going to say it, but just Google Mets in the divisional round. That's it. That's all you got to do. Google it. Philly fans, Met fans, just Google Mets history in the divisional round. And you understand what I'm talking about. The fact that the Mets are playing with house money is fun to say, but they've earned their way here, right? Just like the Phillies won the division and earned their way to a bye, right? But it also means nothing for either team, because if you don't earn it in this series, you're not going to win. Regardless of who wins, that fan base that loses is going to question a lot of things about their team. We'll see how the outcome comes. But if you're a Phillies fan, you should be confident. If you're a Mets fan, why shouldn't you be confident? Just because on paper the Phillies have a better roster means absolutely nothing. Because if we played it on paper, the underdogs would never win. But Philly fans are funny because they were the underdogs the last 2 seasons, specifically in 2022. So they forget about that very quickly. Like they weren't a third wildcard team who made the World Series, who weren't better than most of the teams they beat, i.e. the Braves.
Yep.
And going through, right? They forget about that quickly. You were the Mets. Just remember that. And by the way, the Mets had more wins than you did in that year than the Mets had this year. So remember that, right? You want to talk about your team? Remember your own history. It was only a couple of years ago. I don't know. Maybe it's the cheesesteaks. But with that said, go out there, win game 1, and you're guaranteed to have 2 games at Citi Field. Just take one of these games. We're not getting greedy here, right? Let Philly get greedy. Let them trip over themselves. You take one game here, you're golden. You got your 2 games at Citi Field with the electric atmosphere at Citi Field. Make it happen. Do your job, play good fundamentals, keep this team in the ballpark. Just win, baby. And we'll talk to you in the postgame show, hopefully spanning those W's. And the Philly fans won't show up in the chat if they lose because they just don't. They done it in years past. They won't do it again. So with that said, guys, enjoy the game about a half hour away. We'll see you in the postgame, win or lose. We don't shy away from losses. We will talk about it. It won't be fun, but we'll talk about it. Kodai Senga versus Zack Wheeler. Game 1 of the NLDS at Citizens Bank Park. Enjoy the game, guys. We'll see you later tonight. Let's go, Mets. Beat those Phils. Have a good day, guys.
Let's go, Mets.
My computer froze. Sorry, guys. Apologize. But that's okay. Why my computer froze, I have no idea. So, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to end it just now. I do apologize. My laptop froze on me. So I'm just going to end it on my phone. How about that? That's a new one. But that's what happens when you're live, guys. So, guys, I do apologize for that. It just completely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't. I apologize. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, guys.